Welcome back. I know the whole setup looks really weird. My ring lights still aren't here, so I'm having to use like this yellow tinted lamp to kind of light myself up. I do have a new camera, so the pixel situation should be a little bit better. But yeah, I know this lighting is fucked. It makes me look like a lizard. Today I wanted to give it a rest with a tier list. I don't want people to think I'm just some fucking tier list maker. Ultimately, the algorithm likes the tier list, and the position that I'm in right now, I'm just obviously trying to grow my channel as much as possible. But we are closing in on 600 subs, and I'm happy where we're at. So I'm gonna chill with the tier list a little bit. I'm still gonna make some. I still got the wrestlers to do and a few other ideas, but I want to try and make some actual fucking videos now, if that's okay with you. Today I thought I would do something that will get me a bunch of comments telling me I don't know shit about fighting. I decided to do if Jake Paul was in the UFC, which will never happen for multiple reasons, mainly just because Jake Paul and Dana White hate each other, for a plethora of other reasons as well, obviously. I think Logan will fight in the UFC before Jake does, and I think Logan fighting in the UFC is like a fucking 5% chance, so that should kind of give you an idea of what I think Jake, his percent chance of fighting in the UFC is. What I will say is, there are some matchups that if Jake Paul was to adapt to MMA as quick as he's adapted to boxing, or even adapt half the amount he's done to boxing to MMA, I think that he could give some people some problems. If you see me like looking away to the side, it's because I've been used to looking at the corner of my desk where my laptop was, where now my webcam is on top of my monitor, so I'm still getting used to it. I apologize, and again I apologize for the weird colors and the weird lighting of this camera. The white ring lights will be here soon, and then I will not look like an Argonian. Now I think it's just worth saying every single one of these fights I'm about to say aren't extremely winnable. I just think they're the most winnable fights in the 185-pound division, and Jake Paul has put some promo photos out for PFL of him wearing the light heavyweight orange 205 shorts. If he was to come to the UFC, I don't think there's really a single 205er on the whole roster that he could beat, or that I could realistically put in this video and not just be chatting shit. So I'm going to assume that he would cut to 185. He weighed in at 183 for the Tommy Fury fight. He can make the weight. It's not an unrealistic thing to assume that he would go to 185. So all of these fighters are 185ers. These are his most winnable fights in order from the most winnable to probably the least winnable, but still could probably win it. And we're going to start with the most winnable. I apologize, Nick Diaz. Now, Nick Diaz, he fought Robbie Lawler a couple of years ago. It might have even been last year, and he just looked pretty fucking awful. You know, people say that ring rust could or couldn't be a thing. It's kind of one of those fight myths. Well, if ring rust is a thing, Nick Diaz was definitely feeling it. He looked very slow compared to how he used to. His boxing was kind of all over the place. He just didn't really look like himself. He was kind of out of shape. What I will say now is recent photos of Nick Diaz have shown that he's got back in shape. Now, fighting shape, I'm not sure. But let's assume, right, that he comes in similar to how he did against Lawler, because it is Jake Paul. He wouldn't really take him seriously, although seeing what he did to Nate might make him take him a little bit more seriously, right? Nobody wants to lose to Jake Paul. It's kind of a thing. The MMA fighters need to, come on, you need to fight back, you know what I'm saying? So this is the chance. A debut against Nick Diaz would be an absolutely massive fight. Obviously, you've got the storyline of Nate fighting Jake and losing, getting dropped, almost getting put through the fucking ropes, all of that kind of stuff. Do I think Jake Paul could win this fight? I think if Jake is really as good of a wrestler as he kind of makes it out to sound, and let me just talk about that quick. Jake Paul has said on interviews, people forget I'm Division 1 in Ohio, you know, that's one of the hardest things to achieve in wrestling. Now, people would assume that he's talking NCAA Division 1, which basically means, to my understanding, best high school wrestlers in the whole of the United States. That is NCAA Division 1, I think. Forgive me if I'm mistaken. What Jake actually competed in was Ohio Division 1. So basically, to get to NCAA Division 1, I think you have to go through your own state's Division 1 and see where you place in that. I don't know if Jake made it to the state competition or if he was just a good wrestler in high school and was kind of in talks for it. But one thing I do know is Logan Paul actually did place in the state wrestling Division 1 competition. Logan Paul has genuine wrestling credentials. Sorry, I'm fucking stumbling all over the place today. Jake Paul, I don't think is as good of a wrestler as he kind of makes out. I think Logan Paul's a much better wrestler than Jake. But let's just assume, as I said, this fucking guy adapted to boxing enough to beat people like Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley in just a few years, which I know hindsight's easy to look back and be like, yeah, they were old. Bro, people were picking Ben Askren over Jake Paul. You know what I'm saying? That's how much people didn't think Jake Paul would be able to do this. And he's done it. So let's assume that he goes to one of the best MMA camps, right? He might do. Imagine he goes to somewhere like somebody like Trevor Whitman. Now, I don't think Trevor Whitman would take him, but I think Eric Nixick would. I think there's a few coaches that would take Jake Paul, and there's a few UFC fighters that would kind of like to help him. I could see Sean Strickland helping Jake Paul, getting some content, talking shit to him while he's doing it, as Sean Strickland does, but, you know, that's a legit thing I can see happening. And if Jake gets a decent enough coach behind him and he can hone in those high school Division 1 wrestling skills, as well as using his newly found boxing skills that he's obviously been using for the past few years, if he can stuff Nick's takedowns, which I don't think Nick will go for many takedowns, which is kind of why I think Jake would have a good chance of winning this fight. If them two stand and bang, Jake does have power. He does have decent boxing. Again, I would probably pick Nick if I had to put money on it. But, you know, I would have probably picked Tyron Woodley if I had to put money on it. In fact, I did pick Tyron Woodley and look what happened. So, yeah, let's carry on with the next one. So let's say Jake Paul debuts against Nick Diaz and then they give him his next fight, who is, again, I apologise, Chris Weidman. Now, Chris Weidman basically has no legs at this point. He fucked his leg against Uriah Hall, and then he came back against Brad Tavares, and Brad Tavares just fucked his other leg, just kicked the shit out of it. So let's say Chris comes in for a kind of retirement fight. Now, he is somebody that Jake would have to worry about with the wrestling. If Jake cannot stuff an old man Chris Weidman bad knees takedown, then he's fucked, basically, for the rest of the roster. Chris Weidman, well, that's an exaggeration because there isn't that many heavy wrestlers in middleweight. Well, there is now, but, you know, you can kind of dodge a lot of middleweight wrestlers up the rankings. Not saying Jake Paul's going to climb the rankings, I don't think he would. But let's say he beats Nick Diaz, they give him Chris Weidman. Again, if he can keep it standing and land some heavy shots, Jake does have power, whether you want to admit it or not. He literally shut Tyron Woodley's lights out. Chris Weidman, if he beats Nick Diaz, I think he could probably beat Chris Weidman. They're both very big ifs. I'm sorry, please stop with the hate comments. I'm just trying to make content here, and these are my genuine opinions. Who do I think Jake could beat? I'm not a fucking Jake Paul superfan. I'm just trying to imagine myself, if Dana actually signed Jake Paul, who would he give him? I don't think he would give him either of these guys. I think he would try and give him a killer, but I have kind of included a killer at the end, and maybe even a winnable fight for Jake for a killer. Now, this next fight may just be me trying to murder him, so I apologise if it is, but Brian Barberena. He's on a 3-fight loss skid. He's not the greatest fighter in the world, especially not anymore. Can Jake strike with Brian Barberena and not get knocked out? Probably not, just because the gloves are so small and I don't think his defense would be that great, and Jake Paul's footwork isn't the best either. Do I think he could take Brian Barberena down and maybe just lay on top of him to get a decision? No, I'll be honest. I think he would lose this fight. But when you look at the rankings and you look at who's beat Brian Barberena, if Jake adapts to this sport even half as much as he did to boxing, I think Brian Barberena is a winnable fight. But do I think he wins? No. What chances would I give him winning this fight? Probably like a 30% chance. But Nick Diaz, I would probably give him like a 60% chance. Chris Weidman, probably like, again, 50% chance. Brian Barberena, probably like a 25 or a 30% chance. And then for the final, so let's say he's beat all three of these guys, he's gone 3-0. To give him somebody that will actually probably be in the top 15 at that point, somebody that he could probably beat. If they don't get fraud checked before this fight would be made, it would be a pretty fucking big fight. And that person is Sharaputin Magomedov. Now, for a fucking Dagestani guy with no mustache and a huge beard, right? This guy's wrestling defense is pretty trash. Just from an analytical point of view, obviously, you could obviously fucking double leg me, slam me on my head. I'm not... Just shut up with all that. I can critique a fucking fighter's skills without... You know what I'm saying? Now, the problem that I would have with this fight is Sharaputin is absolutely vicious off his back. So I think If Jake could take him down, I think he would get elbowed, he would get up kicked, he would get punched from the bottom, he would be smacking his legs with his heels. You know, it takes a little while to condition to these MMA strikes. Something as simple as like an axe kick to the leg when you're in somebody's guard, that fucking hurts, bro. You know, it hurts. When you get taken down on your head, snaps back off the canvas, the whiplash, it takes a while to get used to these things. Jake Paul, by this point, with Nick Diaz, Chris Weidman and Brian Barberena under his belt, if that was ever to fucking happen, I think it's a winnable fight for Jake, but I think he would absolutely slice Jake up, and I think Jake would want no part of it. So I don't think he wins this fight. And the striking, trying to get to that takedown without getting fucking knocked out or spinning fucking body kicked and to the liver, like, it'd be a very hard one. Do I think Jake wins any of these fights? Probably not. Do I think he could beat Nick Diaz? Yeah. Do I think he could beat Weidman? Sad to say it, but probably yeah. Do I think he could beat Brian Barberena? Probably not. Do I think he could beat Putin? I fucking hope he could beat I'd love to watch him smash Putin's fucking head in, but no, I don't think so. But I think these are his 4 most winnable fights in the division, without just giving him random fucking people. Obviously, even people like Val Woodburn, the guy that Bo Nickel just fought, I think Val Woodburn would take Jake's head off, you know. There's certain things that we would need to see first. Maybe I can remake this video when Jake has his PFL debut, if they ever do that, and then we can see how is his wrestling, how is his defense, because people do not understand. When you're used to boxing, going to 4-ounce gloves, you shell up like this, a shot can still get through the middle, clip you on the forehead, you're on your ass. You know what I'm saying? It's a different game. So yeah, ultimately, just a quick video on that. I kind of wanted to make it for a little while. Again, please don't fry me in the comments. I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. You know, could he win any of these fights? He went into boxing and outboxed Anderson Silva and dropped him. He KO'd Tyron Woodley. He knocked Nate Diaz's ass through the ropes. It is time, whether we like it or not, it is time to respect Jake Paul as, at the very least, a hard worker, and at the very least, an athlete. Because going like 10 rounds with Silva and all that kind of stuff, going 10 rounds with Fury, like, that's my opinion. If you want to tell me somebody who you'd probably match him up with instead, maybe a better chance of winning, or if you want to call me an absolute fucking idiot for saying that he'd have any chance against any of these guys, either way, all boost the algorithm. Appreciate you all. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully the lighting will be sorted by then. My name's Harry. I talk about fights. Bang.